I love me some French toast. What I don't love is standing at the stove waiting to turn over my toast. And don't get me started on making French toast for guests. My pans can fit a maximum of 2 slices, so that shit takes forever. But I have never been able to find an alternative solution. That is until now. You see, I'm very picky about my French toast. I want it to be crispy on the outside and custardy on the inside. And this French toast casserole somehow checks all of my boxes. It takes very little time and effort. Its taste and texture is unmatched. And it works great as leftovers. I'm Kirsten, and I used to own a bakery with my mom. When she passed away in 2023, I closed down the bakery and started this YouTube channel to process my grief and healing. I love sharing recipes that bring me joy, so today I'm going to teach you how to make a French toast casserole that completely changed my life. It is hands down one of my favorite breakfasts to make, especially when having guests over. This is a continuation of my chronic pain cooking series, where we learn how to make space for ease while cooking and baking when we're exhausted or in pain. As I walk through the recipe, I'll also be sharing some of my mom's baking secrets that she taught me over the years, so you don't want to miss out on that. Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start with the bread. I like to use a baguette. Here I'm using half a baguette that I've cubed and kept out for 8 to 12 hours to dry. If you forget to keep it out, you can also bake the bread cubes at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes to dry them out. This French toast is divided into 2 parts, the custard toast and the crumbly topping. For the custard toast, you're going to need 4 eggs, 1 cup of milk, an 1/8 cup of brown sugar, but you can skip this if you don't want your French toast too sweet, a 1/4 cup of orange liqueur. I'm using Cointreau. FYI, I swear I'm not fancy schmancy out here using liqueur in my recipes. I was just gifted some, but if you don't want to use alcohol, you can also use the zest of 2 oranges instead. My mom always loved using citrus in her baked goods to brighten other flavors and add complexity to sweetness. We're also going to need a teaspoon of vanilla and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. For the crumbly topping, we're going to need a 1/2 cup of walnuts. You can substitute for pecans or almonds, a 1/4 cup of flour, an 1/8 cup of brown sugar, and a 1/4 cup of salted cold butter. We're going to start with our custard. Crack 4 eggs into a bowl. My mom taught me to crack each egg in a separate bowl before adding it to the larger mixing bowl in case one of them is bad. It takes extra time and effort, but could save you having to throw out a bunch of good eggs just because of one bad one. Whisk the eggs well and add the rest of the ingredients. 1 cup milk, an 1/8 cup brown sugar, a teaspoon vanilla, a 1/4 teaspoon salt, and a 1/4 cup of the Cointreau. Whisk again and then submerge your bread cubes in the custard. Transfer the bowl into the fridge and leave overnight. Yes, this recipe does require a resting period, and this is another one of my mom's baking secrets. Sometimes you just have to leave ingredients be and let them do their magic without trying to interfere. You'll notice the next morning that the bread will have soaked in most of the custard, and this will give the bottom half of your French toast casserole a delightful custardy texture. I also like to make my crumbly topping at the same time as the custard and store it in the fridge overnight as well, so that the next morning I just need 5 minutes to assemble everything and bake. For the crumbly topping, I had to chop my walnuts since they were whole. If you don't have the energy to chop, you can crush them in a mortar and pestle or even buy your nuts already chopped. To the nuts, add a 1/4 cup flour and an 1/8 cup brown sugar, and incorporate all ingredients with your fingertips. Next up, we're going to cut the cold butter. We don't need exact measurements for this recipe, so I'm just going to cut approximately. This is another lesson my mom taught me. It's not really a secret, but I've been surprised by how many people have never realized this. When looking at the butter packaging, you can see that they've marked 1 cup, so you're just going to cut a 1/4 of that and then chop it up into tiny bits. We're going to add the cubes to the flour, nuts, and sugar mixture. You'll need to add 1 cube at a time to make sure the cubes don't all clump together. We don't want pools of butter in the topping. Keeping distinct pieces of fat in the flour leads to a crunchier topping. Gently coat the butter cubes with the flour, nuts, and sugar mixture, and then mix until well coated. We don't want to put too much pressure because then the butter will melt from the heat of our hands. My mom always taught me to mix pastry dough for pies and crumbles with my fingers so that I have more control over how much I want to work the dough. And in goes the crumbly topping into the fridge. When you wake up the next morning, you can grease your baking dish or dishes with butter and then spread an even layer of soaked bread and pour over any remaining custard liquid. You'll notice that there's just a little bit of liquid remaining, and that's important to make sure this layer stays moist. Then sprinkle over the crumbly topping and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. This French toast casserole smells divine coming out of the oven. I usually can't be bothered to plate it. I just dive right into the baking dish. My first impression of this casserole is always the crispiness of the topping. You can literally see it before you even hear it. I obviously got my happy dance on the moment I had my first bite. Even my partner was like, can I taste them? This French toast casserole is unbelievable. It's so warm and comforting. Its flavors are incredibly cozy and its textures feel like a party in your mouth. What surprised me most about this casserole was how great it works as leftovers for the week. It retains its crunch even after being microwaved. I tested it with a teeny amount of maple syrup and that was heavenly. The maple syrup pairs so well with the orange. I also love adding stewed berries to this casserole when I have a little more time, just to make it a little more extraordinary. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you try this recipe out. If you're interested in more recipes that take very little time and effort, you should check these out. Also, let me know in the comments below if you have a favorite no-fuss breakfast that you like to make for guests. I'd love to try some of them out. See you in the next video. Bye!